Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Draft Savages NFL Draft Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Cox. With me, as always, my co-host, Justin Higdon, and back from the dead, Justis Mosqueda. What's up, Justis?
Just staying alive. That's my goal. Nothing more, nothing less.
I'm just glad I don't have to hang that picture up behind me in my room in honor of you on the podcast. So,
did you guys have a good President's Day today?
I wrote all damn day. I'm writing a quick combine piece for Bleacher Report and going position by position, so that's all I've done all day.
I spent the day trying to just watching offensive linemen and trying to fall in love with anyone, and it just wasn't successful.
I worked. That's what I did. So cancer never sleeps, man. All day. So, well, we're here, and then we're trying to get a hold of a guest. He may or may not make it. He's having some technical difficulties. Jeff Risdon of DraftLions.com, as well as Bleacher Report. We're dipping into the vast talent pool that is the Bleacher Report community. So, and we already have Justis. So
yeah, it's too bad you have the weakest link here.
That's right. So, and we may get started and talk a little bit about offensive linemen. If Jeff can't make it, we may switch gears. I don't know. We're going to kind of play it by ear real quick, but let's just get a little bit started on this offensive line class. And Justin, you just hit on it. I mean, it's really what's your flavor type of draft in terms of offensive linemen, and there's no consensus in this draft. For you, just overall kind of big picture, is there a player even worth a top 5 pick? Because it's very unfamiliar territory to see a draft go without an offensive lineman top 5.
The short answer is no. There's not. It's like you can watch any number of these guys, and there's always going to be something that they struggle with. It's different for each guy, but just take probably the top 2 names, Brandon Scherff and La'el Collins. And Scherff, for me, is he's a good player. He played hurt this year. He struggled a little bit with some speed rush, and I don't know if it was more the knee bothering him or what it was, but the more I watched him, the more I just wanted to put him at guard, and people have been telling me about that beforehand. I was trying to keep him at tackle in my mind. I still think there's a team or two that might try him at left tackle, but he doesn't have the ideal arm length that teams look for. The frame's maxed out. Shift gears over to Collins. A lot of people love this guy. Put him in the top. He's in a lot of people's personal top 5s, but for me, it's just he's always had a struggle countering the inside move and getting back to his right. I see that with quite a few guys in this class, and he's another guy I've always wanted to kind of put him at guard, but I'll accept him playing left tackle, but it's just not ideal to me. So then beyond those 2 guys, anything trying to sandwich anybody into the top 5, I think would be a huge reach, and I just don't see it. Collins, if I had to place a bet on one of them going in the top 5, it would be Collins, but I would still want to bet the field on that. I think it's going to be defensive heavy top 5.
Justis, for you, I know you're not too big on this class either. What are your overall thoughts on this class?
Yeah, I mean, I think La'el's my top guy just because I think La'el can hang at tackle. Scherff, yeah, I'd probably look at him at guard. One thing that we brought up is how Amari Cooper, you put him in last year's draft class, and he's probably the 4th receiver taken off the board, right? Would Zach Martin by far be the top offensive lineman in this class? Because Zach Martin was the 4th offensive lineman off the board last year.
There would probably be some bias because of how well he played this year. I think that's always hard to gauge a guy that was an all-pro selection as a rookie, and then be like, oh, if you put him in this class, just as a prospect, where do you grade him? But let me cut everybody off. Jeff Risdon is here. Jeff, we appreciate you joining us. How are you, man?
Sorry about the technical difficulties. I switched equipment and finally got in.
Oh, not a problem. We appreciate you taking the time to work on it and join us. You work you run draftlions.com, obviously a dedicated Detroit Lions draft site, but you do more than that, and you're also a featured columnist for Bleacher Report and their Detroit Lions blog-ish type thing. But tell us a little bit about both of those ventures for you.
Yeah, actually, Bleacher Report and I no longer work together for the time being, anyways. But I am still working for Real GM, where I've been covering the draft since 2004. It's nominally a basketball site, but we do have a football site and some other things going on. And the traffic has really picked up in the last couple of years, so it's been a really good opportunity. We've got a few more people. The football department has expanded far beyond just me, which is great. So it's cool to be part of something that's growing with that. And the Detroit Lions draft is a lot of fun. I got a couple of really good young writers on there that are doing a lot of good work.
Just one of the OGs, if you will, of the draft Twitter world, and he's one of the best in the business, and we appreciate him taking the time out. He gets down to St. Pete almost every year in Mobile, so he's kind of been on the ground, and he gets to watch all these guys, so we appreciate him taking his time. We were just kind of talking about this draft class in terms of the offensive line talent, and the first question off the board was just in overall this class, is there a top 5 talent on or squeeze one in there?
It would be a real forced fit. I just don't see it. I don't see anybody that's as good as Tyron Smith even, who went, I believe, 9th or 10th. It's just not. There's not that top end. That's not to say there isn't a lot of talent there, because there's a lot of guys who are going to be good NFL players, but you're not looking at. There's no Joe Thomas in this draft. There's not even a Lane Johnson in this draft, a guy who went 3rd overall a couple years or 4th overall a couple years ago. There just isn't that top end, but that next tier of guys, there's a lot of very good football players there. They're just not going to get drafted that high, or at least I hope they don't get drafted that high, because it's going to put up expectations that their bodies just can't cash.
When you look at this draft class and you look at just the offensive tackles coming out, outside of maybe TJ Clemmings, everybody's getting mentioned about let's move him to right tackle, let's move him to guard, and I've seen that with Clemmings as well. Is there a true blue left tackle in this class, or is it going to be a get him where you can type thing?
I think Clemmings can play left tackle. Now, it's interesting that he hasn't done it yet, and it's going to be a position change again for him after coming over from defense. That's going to be something that, it probably isn't going to look pretty right away. He's not going to be a stud right away, but you can certainly do worse at right tackle than TJ Clemmings, and I do think he can play left tackle at some point. I think Lyle Collins can play left tackle. I know a lot of people really want to kick him inside to guard. Why not try him at left tackle and see if he can hang out there? If he can't, then you can always move him inside, because his skills clearly do translate to inside. But he has enough ability on the outside. I think he can play left tackle. And then there's a couple other guys, later down, deeper down that I think can make functional left tackles. But you're probably not going to want to play them there unless you really have to.
As far as that Lyle Collins thing goes, he does a lot of things very similarly to Dwayne Brown, who plays for the Texans. What do you think about him as? I know you're talking about him. He could play left. He could potentially play left tackle and right tackle. What do you think about him at guard? Because what I saw from the footage that we were available to see from the Senior Bowl, his sloppy footwork in a booth, that doesn't really bode together very well.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I like him more outside. I think the way that he uses his feet are more. It's better served for being out a little bit more on an island. He doesn't have very good awareness when he's tightly packed in space. It seems like he gets a little unconfident. He likes being out on that island better. You see that Dwayne Brown's a good example of a guy who's like that too. He can't stand having a tight end flanking him, and I think Collins is the same way, because they don't have as clear of an assignment for him. It gets fuzzier for him. I definitely see him in that same light. So that's a good example.
When you look at this class, Justin, one of the things that comes up a lot is can a guy like Jake Fisher sneak into the first round? I'm going to skip Justis on this because he's an Oregon homer, so he's probably got him top 5 on his board right now. But can a guy like Jake Fisher sneak into the first round, or is the functional strength and weight too much of an issue for you?
I hope he doesn't get into the first round because, like Jeff said, then you're dealing with unrealistic expectations for a player. And Fisher's a guy I just had an opportunity to watch today on my day off, and I just, I know he was playing hurt, but you watch that Florida State game, and Fisher's on the ground an awful lot during that game. He's just getting off balance a lot. You watch the Ohio State game, the national championship game, and a lot of his blocking is he's grabbing and pulling guys down. I was surprised watching that game watching it live that he wasn't called for several holding penalties. Then, watching it back again today, I found it to be. I just wonder because he's playing hurt. We know he had that leg injury earlier in the year. Is he kind of favoring the legs? Is that why he's going to these moves where it's almost all upper body to try and pull and drag guys? He's doing an okay job. I mean, he's getting things done, but I just worry about like his balance, his strength, and the pro day numbers from the Oregon Junior Pro Day suggest that he's not a very explosive athlete. He's going to run okay, and he's obviously in decent physical condition. He's used to dealing with the tempo of Oregon's offense, but he's got pretty poor jump numbers if those hold up, and I'm not sure about his strength. So overall, what I saw out of Fisher was more like a 3rd or 4th round guy. So if I see him getting sandwiched in these mock drafts in the first round, and I just think that would probably be a mistake.
On the flip side, today Tony Pauline came out with his some of his rumors, and one of them was Ty Sambrailo, a guy that Justin has talked about since basically September or October. Is a guy that the Packers could be interested in the back end of round 1, especially if Brian Bulaga gets out of there. Justis, outside of the fact that you don't want to tackle wherever you guys are drafting, what are your thoughts on Sambrailo? Would he be interesting to you or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that you could probably like plug and play. Like Fisher needs some work and stuff like that. I don't think Fisher's going to be a first-round pick, but I think, I'm probably a little higher than Justin is on him. He's probably like mid to late second-rounder type for me. But you're right. I mean, he needs a lot more lower body strength, a lot more core strength. I can't really see him playing in a man scheme early. I could totally see him like he might be able to play all 5 in his zone scheme, to me, but I don't think he's going to be special at any of them. I think his upside is going to be like David Bakhtiari-ish. But as far as Ty Colorado State, I'm a big fan. I mean, he's just very good all around, very well coached. I think you can just throw him in and just not worry about him. And I think that has value in this draft class where we see a lot of guys that are going to probably be like, I guess you wouldn't say boom or bust, but like left tackle or bust.
Jeff, when you look at these guys and then just kind of the overall tackle class, how many get sandwiched into that first round?
That's tough. Tony Pauline is a guy that I tend to believe, and Sambrailo certainly fits the Ted Thompson mold of being a guy that he tries to prove that he's smarter than you by taking him that high. He did that with Bulaga to mixed results, and did it with Derek Sherrod to atrocious results. He, for whatever reason, he loves those tackles in the 20s that probably belong in the 40s, and it wouldn't surprise me if it happens again. I'm not a big Sambrailo fan. For me, I don't like pass blockers who are catch blockers. He doesn't dictate the action nearly as much as I like. I like guys who go after it. I grew up watching Orlando Pace play. That's my ideal left tackle. I want a guy who goes out there and even if he's setting an edge and having to slide, he's firing out with his arms and striking. He's making the first contact, and Sambrailo very rarely does that in the tapes that I've seen. That's a tough way to live in the NFL, where guys can cross your face, guys can give you an inside-outside move and be past you faster than you can react. I don't see him being. I don't even see him being a second-round talent personally. I would prefer Fisher over Sambrailo, especially if he can add some bulk. With one of the things that I like about Fisher is that he can play inside, like Justis alluded to. He could probably even play center if you really needed him to. And in fact, that might not be the worst spot in the world for him. I do want to see him get to at least 300 pounds and be able to squat that much. I'm not sure he can right now. Some of that's because of the leg injury. So, yeah, there's talent there. I think both of those guys belong in the second to early third round, but it wouldn't surprise me if Sambrailo goes in the top 40. I think you're going to see Andrus Peat go. I think he's going to be the first tackle off the board. I think he's going to go in the top 10. God help the team that takes him. I'm just really not a fan there. I think
here.
Clemmings is a first-round talent. Have pretty good idea that he's not going to fall past 23 if he even makes it that far, and I don't think he will. I think La'el Collins is going solidly in the first round. Brandon Scherff, if you consider him a tackle, will be a first-round player. I don't consider him a tackle. I think he's strictly a guard at the next level, but somebody might try him at tackle and realize a year later that he needs to move into guard. So I think you're definitely looking at 4, possibly 5. Is there any weird outlier guy that could sneak in? Other than Fisher, maybe if he wows at the combine in his pro day, and shows that he's fully healthy with his leg injury and does some miraculous broad jump that he's heretofore never done, I don't see another guy really getting in there.
Well,
So
what do you think about Flowers?
Justice.
That's my question.
Flowers,
yeah.
Flowers is that's a tough one because I watched the game where he got hurt, the game where he came back from getting hurt, and then the game after that. And I didn't see a great guy. Now I've been told by people that I trust that I need to watch a lot more because there's a lot to like there. What I didn't like the fact that he was a lunge blocker. He was way out over his pads a lot, trying to engage people. That makes you wind up on the ground a lot at the next level. That is Gosder Cherilus in a nutshell, and I lived with Gosder Cherilus as the right tackle in Detroit for 4 years. He was okay, but I wouldn't want to spend that high of a pick on him.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe that I got. Oh, go ahead, Justin.
I was watching Flowers early today, and I was just going to say that one of the first things I wrote down was heavy hands and heavy feet. I just saw a guy who was kind of lumbering. He wasn't real mobile. Maybe like Jeff said, I was catching these games where he was playing with a leg injury too. But I see some guys that are really respected that hold him in high regard, and I just didn't see anything more than a day 2 pick out of that guy. He's kind of a bigger. The one thing he did that I liked was he was able to cut guys off when they tried to cross his face inside a little bit better than some of the other players, especially some of the bigger tackles in this class. But that was really, then you would see him also kind of get smoked on the speed rush, especially if you watch that Virginia game. It was just not his day. So I know Mayock's kind of high on him, had him like his 4th tackle, I think.
When you look at this class and just the overall sense of being, nobody really likes Andrus Peat except the NFL. Nobody knows what to do with La'el Collins, or everybody has a question on TJ Clemmings. What about later in this draft? Is there someone or multiple guys that are day 2 or even day 3 picks that can come in and maybe sit a year, but in year 2 and year 3 make an impact, almost like Teron Armstead did with the Saints, or in that mold? And we'll start with Jeff.
I like Donovan Smith out of Penn State. I think he's a guy that probably needs to get a little bit more love. He's got a lot of potential going forward. Was very, very good against Michigan when I saw him in person. And I went into that game with absolutely no knowledge of him. I'm just like, wow, he can play. I like both the Oklahoma tackles to some extent. I like Williams a lot more than Thompson. Tyrus Thompson's one of those weird guys. He was a lot better as a sophomore than he was as a senior. Now he's just a pure unadulterated holding machine. But there's a lot to work with there. I like him as much as I liked Phil Lodeholt coming out, and Lodeholt wound up being a pretty decent right tackle for Minnesota for a few years. Williams is a guy, he's probably going to go in the second round, but that's another guy that I think can play. There's some deeper guys. I like Rob Havenstein out of Wisconsin too. At the Senior Bowl, he was very impressive. He's one of those guys, and I said it to Dan Kadar, Mr. Mocking the Draft. You want function over form at your right tackle spot, and that's what Rob Havenstein gives you, because he doesn't look good, but man, he keeps his quarterback clean. He keeps his butt off the ground. Keeps his man in front of him from come hell or high water. It doesn't always look good, but he gets it done. So those are some guys that I would look at as maybe having some potential down the road.
Justin, some names that have come out the last couple days that people are higher on than what I've seen or heard before were DJ Humphries and then you just mentioned it, Tyrus Thompson. What is the love of Humphries? Is it just the athleticism and the kind of clay-like game he has right now?
I guess. I mean, he's what was it? Tony Pauline said today that he played games at 280 pounds, and that's just not going to cut it. If you're going to take a guy that weighs 280, hopefully he's put on some pounds since then, but that's almost a situation where you have to redshirt him in the NFL. That's way too late to play left tackle, and you can see it shows up in his game. Like he's trying to block and stay engaged. And I mean, I give the guy credit because he's putting in effort, but at the end of the play, he's getting shoved around. And these are guys that are a lot lighter than even 280 shoving him around. So he's got to have some kind of he's got to put some weight on to anchor better. I think what people like is they see a guy who is an athlete. Well, he should test well because he's lighter than everyone else in his position group. So he should run faster or jump higher because he's not carrying as much weight. But this is a player, he's had injury. He missed a couple games this year with injuries. He missed, I think, the last 5 or 6 games last year with injuries. One of these players that we're seeing shoehorned into a higher status than really what his game suggests. And I like the guy Jeff mentioned, Donovan Smith from Penn State. That was a player who really impressed me. And when I saw some people with some criticisms of him, I know we like to use vines and GIFs to show certain plays to illustrate what we're talking about. But one of the illustrations I saw today was he had trouble with a cross-the-face move from Joey Bosa. Well, a lot of guys had trouble with that move. Donovan Smith was putting together some pretty good games toward the end of the season, and he was really good in their bowl game. So that's a player. He was kind of a surprise coming out. Went to the Senior Bowl. I thought he played. I didn't see the Senior Bowl practices, but I thought he played well in the game. So that's a player I would take a look at. And I know another guy who was really high on him was that I saw tweeted out the other day was Ryan Riddle.
Justis, I want to kind of end the tackle talk with this and then segue into the interior offensive lineman. Jeremiah Potosi, you kind of broke the news that he was coming out of Utah early. And then our guy Tony Pauline today said that scouts are calling him baby Mike Iupati. So
he sure did. I don't necessarily.
Does he hang at tackle, or is he going to have to go inside to guard?
Oh, I thought he was a guard the whole time. That whole process when I was talking to people down in Utah. But I didn't even think he was going to be that. I thought he was going to be, that fringe day 2, day 3 type of guard. I mean, Iupati was like one of the best guard prospects we've ever seen. Like that's very, very high praise that I'm not willing to hitch my wagon to at this point. But hey, at least he kind of warrants coming out of college now. I'm not yeah like if there's one guy who I'm like for sure he needs to go to guard, it's probably him. As far as the other tackle prospects that I liked, I'm trying to think. I think we covered all of them, other than Corey Robinson. He's another one of those long and strong guys that I think you might just be like, you might get lucky with him. And that's really what you're looking for from like a 5th round pick type guy, which is probably where he'll end up. That's probably the last guy that we haven't mentioned that I'd probably consider.
Jeff, when you look at this interior offensive line class, it looks like the top talent are guys that played outside in college. Obviously, Cam Erving moved it's kind of middle of the year to center, but is Scherff the best guard prospect, and then is Erving the best center prospect to you, or are these just guys that are good offensive linemen who are getting moved, so they're getting kind of thrown into the top of that interior O-line class?
You know what? I think it's both, honestly. I think they are the top prospects, and I think they proved that they're good football players, and they found, or in Erving's case, he found his NFL destiny, and God bless him because he was a 4th, 5th round talent as a tackle. But at center, there's so much to like there. There really isn't anything that he just needs reps and experience, and I think he can be very good at it. And I gave him a 1st round grade as a center. And this is a guy, again, that would be a 4th or 5th round pick as a tackle, and almost, I guess, came out last year. Thank God he went back. Scherff, just the way he handles himself, he exudes guard qualities. Yeah, you can probably play him at tackle and get by with it, but he's got that rare tenacity and power. I mean, he's literally trying to rip your arms off when he's blocking you, and that's a quality that you want more inside than outside. Just a fantastic, he's got enough athleticism that he played tackle in college, and I think that's what separates him from guys like Laken Tomlinson and AJ Cann at guard, guys who are going to be good guards, but they just don't have that elite athleticism, or tremendous all-around package. Like Tomlinson is a powerful guy. Cann's more of like a tactician, a smooth guy. But they don't really stand out in more than one area, and that's something that Scherff really does do, and I think that's what puts him at the top.
Justin, when you look at this this class, and you have, he just hit on them, AJ Cann, Laken Tomlinson, you have the Florida State guys, Trey Jackson and Matthias, and you even have the young guy, or not the young guy, but the small school guy in Ali Marpet from Hobart. Is this guard class just kind of after, what was it, 3 or 4 years of really, really good guards coming out in the 1st round?
No, I think there are still really some starting caliber guards in this class, and then you have to think about the next question, which is where do you value taking guards? And we saw a couple of years ago in a class that was similarly deemed weak, that pushed a couple guards all the way into the top 10.
That's right, number 7, baby.
Yeah, we're not going to see that obviously this year, but Scherff, if Scherff goes in the top 10 and then someone puts him at guard, he's kind of this year's. He can be Zach Martin and Joel Bitonio, kind of what they did as rookies. I'm not sure he's quite the caliber athlete that Bitonio was, but he should be a pretty good one. And then, the guys Jeff mentioned, AJ Cann and Laken Tomlinson, somebody's going to like those guys. Tomlinson's like a road grader, but he's got some long arms too. Cann played next to the guy Justis just mentioned, Corey Robinson. And at times, that left side of that offensive line was just moving people out of the way and just creating huge, huge run lanes. So there's some talent there. But if we're talking interior line, like kind of second tier, and I mentioned this guy on Twitter, I think yesterday, that if I miss on Cam Erving early and I want to get a center with, kind of late day 2, maybe early day 3, I'm looking at B.J. Finney from Kansas State. That's a player that really, really impressed me at the Shrine game. In practices, he was one of the toughest interior linemen there. They were trying to play him at center and guard. I think he's a center. But I really like his tape, too. I think Finney's going to be one of those guys who gets drafted like in the middle rounds but ends up being a 10-year starter down the road.
When you talk about this center class, Justice, Erving's kind of the sexy name up top, but Hronis Grasu was kind of the guy for 3 years, and injuries have been his issue. Is he number 2, or is it Reese Dismukes from Auburn, or is it just kind of what you like out of a center?
I think Grasu's jumped him Dismukes at this point. I think Erving by far is the number 1 guy. I agree with everyone that he's probably going to be a first-round pick. I mean, he's really talented at center. He definitely found his spot. After that, I mean, you got Finney, you got Gallick from Boston College, who I still haven't seen yet, but people say is very talented. There's just not that very many centers, but if you look around the league, there's just not that many centers anyway. You know what I mean? A lot of them are guys who have moved from other positions and things like that, and you're not too deep at center either because you only have 3 guys on the bench to cover 5 spots, so those guys have to be flexible. So, I mean, guys who are guards will move through and, flex in and out at center. Guys who are playing, zone tackles can probably move to all 5 at some point. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say this is a weak center class by any means. I just think that, center classes in general aren't, the deepest positions.
Jeff, you're a fan of the Lions, obviously, and 2 years ago you guys kind of struck gold with Larry Watford in round 3 somehow, and he's been outside of injuries, he's been a very good starter in the NFL. Browns did it this year with Joel Bitonio. Obviously, the Packers have 2 of the better guards in the NFL, and both those guys were day 2 picks, correct, Justice?
The entire Packers offensive line is made up of 4th rounders, other than Corey Linsley, who was a 5th round center, and then Balaga, who's playing right tackle. But if J.C. Treader would have been playing, he would have been a 4th rounder too, so they would have had 4 fours.
When you look at this class, is there a day 1 starter that you're going to find on day 2 to you, Jeff, on the interior? Is that Cannon Tomlinson like you talked about earlier?
You know what? I'm with Justin. B.J. Finney is my number 2 center, and I think he can go in and start right away. He's not going to wow anybody athletically, but he never gets beat clean. He's very good at doing all those little holding tricks to keep him from getting beat, which is something that you don't normally see out of a collegiate center or a guy who's transferring into center from another position. He's very savvy. He's got a bit of a gut, but he knows how to use it, sort of like a talented bouncer. And he's a guy. Another guy that I really liked was Greg Manx out of Toledo. Unfortunately, he's probably going to miss his rookie year. He tore his labrum in Shrine game practices. That's probably going to put him out for a year. But that was a guy who was looking at 4th or 5th round that I thought could have started right away. Guards, you know what? Ali Marpet from Hobart. This guy, nobody had seen him before the Senior Bowl, and the first day of the Senior Bowl practices, he was okay. He was working primarily at tackle. They moved him into guard the next 2 days, and he was just flooring people. I mean, I stood and watched him with Matt Miller from Bleacher Report for a little while, and we were looking at him like, who the hell is this guy? Where did he come from? It's like the guard gods just dropped him in our presence, and we have to revel in it and accept the fact that he was so technically perfect with his hands and his balance, his stance, and his hand placement. All the guys there, especially Laken Tomlinson, who takes a very exaggerated outside wind-up to come into the chest, was getting coached on that all the time. Marpet needed it once, and he got it right every single rep after that. That's something that's really remarkable for a guy coming from a D3 school that I don't even know where it is, Hobart College. I think it's in New York, but I don't really know, and I've still never seen the guy play. Apparently he played in a wishbone offense. So he's obviously been doing a lot of work at finding targets at the second level and moving, and it shows. I think he's a guy that can come in and start right away. And I've heard some grapevine rumors, not to play Tony Pauline or anything, that he's a guy that's going to get considered as early as the second round. So there's another guy that's really helped himself quite a bit.
Yeah, Jeff, I caught some of the tape. I have like 3 or 4 of his games because I got him from someone because I was like, if this guy's really going to be a top 100 pick, and the reason that he's there is because the Packers, kind of tipped off Savage, I got to take a look at this guy. You don't want to see that tape. You don't want to see. It's just like it's someone with like a tripod just like moving it around. It's terrible. I used to videotape this stuff in high school when my knee was blown out, and I was doing a better job than those guys.
Oh, that's rough. You know what? There's a couple other guys too. If his back checks out, Oklahoma's guard Adam Sheed or Shed, I'm not sure which way he says it. There's a guy who can start at the NFL level if his back can hold up. Very fundamentally sound, powerful player.
Yeah, and he's a dainty 340. So you talk about road grader. That's I mean he moves well. I like you said, but his back is always has been a concern. The other small school guy from Tennessee State. Has anybody seen Robert Myers play? Just from in terms of I haven't seen him, so I was curious why his name's getting thrown around so much.
I saw him at the Senior Bowl. He's got fantastic hair, so he's got that going for him. Was pretty athletic. Looked very good with just wearing his underwear, for what that matters. Apparently matters a lot because they parade all these guys out for us every year. It's quite the show. The first day of practice, he was impressive. He showed good engagement ability. He plays a little high. He's going to have to learn to get his butt down, get some sand in his pants. And then he got hurt and missed the rest of the time, unfortunately. But people were pretty positive in their reception of him.
Hey, Seth, before we move on here, I want you to talk a little bit about your guy Jamil Douglas from Arizona State and kind of what his future is, because that's a guy that I've kind of run hot and cold with when I've watched the Sun Devils play. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle?
I think you want him at guard because he's got that kind of wild man athleticism, but he has no idea what he's supposed to do with it. So I think if you put him on an island in the NFL, you're going to end up having flashes of brilliance and then probably a quarterback getting hurt sometime. Whereas you can kind of protect him in situations as a guard, slide protection, get your center to help double team on certain spots. He's not a guy I don't think you can start in year one. He gets lost far too often. I think it was the Utah game. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was a play where he just completely forgot to block Nate Orchard. And it's like, you're talking about Nate Orchard. You're talking about one of the sack leaders in college football. How do you just forget to block him? So I think athletically he's gonna open a lot of eyes, and I think it's gonna cause people to go, okay, let's go back and watch him. But when you watch him, the inconsistencies will drive you crazy. But athletically speaking, he's a day 3 guy that's going to get picked up because he has those, at 6'4" and 310, he moves really, really well. So a team's going to be like, oh well, we can fix the issues that he has but you can't coach what he does already. But as Ryan Riddle likes to say, being able to teach it doesn't mean they can learn it. So we'll see what happens with him. I wouldn't be shocked if he started down the line, and I honestly wouldn't be shocked if he was out of the NFL in 2 or 3 years because he just couldn't grasp the whole situation. Anything else on the interior, guys? I know this class is not nearly as sexy as last year's interior line class or even 2 years ago, but I think there's some talent that this draft in general has a lot of talent that's just not, maybe I think everybody wants like day 2 picks in this draft. Like everybody's willing to trade down and just stock up on day 2 picks and take a lot of guys that are going to be 6 to 8 year veterans in the NFL, as opposed to maybe the 10 to 15 guys that might be all pro caliber type guys. That's kind of what I've gotten from a lot of people I've talked to and just the guys I've watched so far. Jeff, what are your just kind of overall thoughts on this class as we wrap it up?
I think you're right on that, and I think some of it is you emulate who's winning now. Look who's winning now. New England is doing it without a lot of stars other than the quarterback position. Look at, the Seahawks made the Super Bowl without a drafted wide receiver on their team. All of their secondary is day 3 guys. You see Green Bay, like Justice mentioned earlier, their offensive line is very, very good, and it's built up of guys that came later in the draft. That they pluck guys like Jordy Nelson out of the second round. They find those values that fit exactly what they need. That's what teams are looking for now, and I do think there's a trend towards that where you're going to see different teams eyeing different people for specific roles, and you're going to see a guy who's going to go maybe 24th or 30th for one team that would be in the 5th round for another team just because of the speciality of what they're doing. But I do think you're going to see a lot of emulation of, okay, let's see if we can, get 1 or 2 stars and then surround them with a lot of really good quality role players. I think that's where the league is trending to, and you get those guys in the 2nd through the 5th rounds.
Justin, is this a bad draft to have 2 first-round picks, or is that something that you can package, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a bad draft to try and package 2 first-round picks to move up, because who are you moving up for?
Marcus Mariota.
No. I think that I don't think it's a bad draft to have 2 first-round picks if you sit there and you play your board and you do what Jeff was talking about, which is to try and find a couple stars and surround with good role players. The problem is this team that we're talking about, the Cleveland Browns, they don't have that. So they're looking for 2 impact players, and I think they're a franchise that's notoriously caved to peer pressure from the media, from their fan base, from a meddling owner, say, and they end up making the wrong picks. I mean, it's to be this unsuccessful with this many high draft picks for 15, 16 years, you have to try to draft that poorly. You have to try to run an organization that poorly, and they are doing that. So I think there's ways they can come out of this with some good quality players with those 2 picks, but I don't. This isn't something to package those picks to move up would be a disaster because they just simply can't afford that. The more the merrier. They need as many picks because they're going to miss on several, so they got to try and have as many as they can so they hit on a couple.
You're going to get no sympathy from the Lions fan and Cardinals fan that are on this podcast and suffered through 20-plus years of why are we drafting this guy? What are we doing? Is there a vision? So, yeah. But yeah, no, I mean you're right. It's interesting because you have 2 picks in a draft where you could probably get a right tackle and a defensive tackle that could really help your team if you had the other pieces surrounding them, but you kind of are lacking in those other pieces. So you draft that right tackle and that defensive tackle, and all of a sudden you're they're bust because they're not making plays, and honestly that's not what they're there to do. But nobody around them is making play. Justice, the Packers suck. The Ducks suck.
Yeah.
What are your just kind of overall thoughts on this class as we close this out and get to the hot takes?
Wow, I think it's going to be really hard to pin down who's going to go into the end of the first round. I think the end of the first round is probably the hardest place to project because that's where you have the lack of talent, in my opinion at least. Because everything just gets shifted up, and then there's like depth in the middle of the draft, but just right there at the end, like picks like 20 through 40 are going to be the hardest to project because I just have no idea who's going to go there. Like, I think it was I wrote an article on Eric Armstead, and we had Todd McShay mocking Eric Armstead at like 8th overall, and then another dude from ESPN was calling him a CFL defensive lineman. Yeah, this has happened. I have no. I've watched Eric Armstead for 3 years, and like he's not going 8th overall. If he goes 8th overall, someone's probably getting fired. Someone's probably getting fired. One more note on the interior, the interior offensive linemen. Two guys who aren't being considered as like interior offensive linemen but should be are Cameron Botticelli from Minnesota and James Castleman from Oklahoma State. Some teams, I mean, it must depend on a team-by-team basis, but I know some teams are looking at those two defensive tackles as potential guards.
The J.R. Sweezy route, then.
Yep.
That's interesting because, as Jeff eloquently pointed out earlier, it's a copycat league, and in Seattle, Sweezy's not great, but he's been the guard on a team that's gone to the NFC Championship game and 2 Super Bowls, so it's obviously not a bad pick. So, Jeff, feel free to join in if you have any of these fantastic hot takes from around Twitter and the internet, like Eric Armstead going 8th overall, or you can just laugh with us as we do every week as we get into the hot takes segment, and I'll start it off this week with a buddy of mine, a guy that has worked for Bleacher Report and Cardinals fan. This is interesting because I don't know if this is necessarily how strong this take is, but he said Jalen Strong is about to be the next great wide receiver on Sundays. I think that the term great wide receiver is overstated. Jeff has a great wide receiver that he's a fan of, and obviously I've had the pleasure of watching Larry Fitzgerald for a long time, and I think those two combined have something like 4 playoff wins and 4 playoff appearances. So the wide receiver position being great, how important can that be? And I mean, is that a position where if you don't have a great one, it matters? Because as Jeff said, Seattle's proven that that's really not important.
And look at like Seattle didn't have a drafted receiver. Look at what New England did. They had Julian Edelman, a bad Kent State quarterback, I might add. He wasn't a good quarterback there. And what is he? What have they done? You look at a couple other teams that have San Francisco. They have Michael Crabtree. He's the most expensive, overrated slot receiver in the league, and the carcass of Anquan Bolden, and they keep going. They win with that. You can win with bad wide receivers. Now you have to have a little bit more than what Kansas City or Cleveland have, but you can get by. New Orleans for years had a lot of guys who were okay wide receivers. They didn't have that blazing number one guy, but they had a committee that worked very well. So yeah, you can absolutely win without him. But man, when you need a first down on 3rd and 15, it sure is nice to have a guy like Calvin Johnson or Larry Fitzgerald or even Antonio Brown that can go and that they're going to get it for you.
Justin, you have any hot takes this week?
Oh, yeah, I do. And first I want to say props to Jalen Strong. He's made the hot take section, I think, like every single show except for like 3. So, another show favorite, Andrus Peat. Now, this take is from NFL Draft Bites, so I don't follow this account. It doesn't have the greatest reputation as far as breaking news, but I kind of actually made sense out of this take. It was Andrus Peat is ranked as my 4th tackle, but I wouldn't touch him. He'd be on my do not draft list. On the surface, that sounds outrageous, right? Like you would say that he's your 4th rated tackle, but then that you wouldn't draft him. But I kind of understand where this guy's coming from, and it kind of sparked a conversation the other day. Like I thought it would be interesting if draft analysts and writers, instead of having rankings, because there's you could put a guy like Pete in your rankings because he's got talent and maybe in the right situation you can make something of that. But it would be interesting if draft writers just left guys out that they just didn't want to pick. I mean, regardless of their talent. If you have a 3rd round grade on Andrus Peat, and it really came down to it, would you even want to pick him? And if not, then maybe just leave him out of your rankings altogether. I think that would be interesting. I think that's what this guy was trying to say. Acknowledging there's some athletic ability, acknowledging that this a player coming from a program like Stanford who's been a starter, maybe he can get coached up, but at the same time not wanting to pick him. And it was an interesting take. It was pointed out to me, and I already had it favorited by that time because I was all over it. But really just made me think, and it just made me think of how much more interesting all of these rankings would be if there were just boards that had players left off altogether.
Justis, what about you this week?
Yeah, I'm going back to that Eric Armstead take. So we already have that McShay had him, going 8th overall to the Atlanta Falcons, which seems insane, probably, because like he didn't even make it. Like he's never made a Pac-12, like an all Pac-12 list even. Like he's really just like he's still kind of living off of like I was the number 1 recruit in high school type thing. But ESPN Insider's Travis Haney said Armstead is a potential All-Pro at left tackle based on his skill set, and a CFL player on the defensive line based on his performance at defensive end and tackle so far. I personally think he's leaving millions on the table by playing defense. In fact, if he were my son, I would relentlessly hound him to make the switch.
So that means I don't even know how to what that would mean.
No, he's an All-Pro left tackle. No, even though he hasn't played left tackle since he was 18, he's All-Pro now. He gets it. It's on his Wikipedia page and everything now.
The draft season's so silly for reasons like this, because you take a guy that hasn't played something for 4 years and say, well, he can do it tomorrow. So and he'll be really good.
Oh my God, I love this. Like I hope Jameis shows up at 250 pounds. There's nothing greater. There'd be nothing greater in my life than if Jameis just shows up with that 250 pounds. Is like I don't care.
All right, guys. Anything else tonight before we head out of here?
Well, as always, just want to remind people that we're on iTunes. Subscribe. It looks like we're doing pretty well with the rankings there. Subscribe. Give us feedback. Let us know what kind of things that you want us to talk about, and fill those comments with hot takes. We'll read them off. It's really starting to heat up. We've got the Combine coming up. There was one thing I wanted to say about the Combine real quick before we get out of here. A couple names to look for who might not have great Combines. We already talked about 2 of them. Jake Fisher, as well as Eric Flowers. I think based on the junior pro day numbers, I'm expecting some kind of rough Combines out of those 2 guys. I think because the wide receiver class is such a freak show with so many talented guys, I think you're going to be a little bit disappointed in Justin Hardy working out. He's a guy who's getting some hype right now. His junior pro day numbers are kind of on the low end. And then on the flip side of that, some guys to look out for on the high end, on the freak list. Ross Sherman from Lafayette. He was kind of a surprise invite to me. I looked up his junior pro day numbers. This guy could really shock people this weekend. He's a running back, might project to a slot receiver, so keep an eye on those guys. Combine's always fun because the hot takes will be flowing. We might have to dedicate like a half hour to them next week.
It's going to be awesome.
Yes. I'm already awaiting the Philip Dorsett is a round 1 pick. I know Mel Kiper's already beat everybody to that, but yes, Jeff, this is what we do at the end of every show. It's phenomenal and heartbreaking all at the same time, but it lightens up the end. So, well, Jeff, I appreciate you spending some time with us. Everybody check out Jeff's work on RealGM.com and DetroitLionsDraft.com. And what are you working on going forward here, Jeff?
Well, on RealGM last night, or actually this morning, I posted my pre-combine offensive ranks, the top 5 at each position. The defensive one, as soon as I pick a 5th safety, will go up probably tomorrow morning. Having a lot of trouble finding 5 safeties that I like. So yeah, that's going there. We got a lot of scouting reports coming at Detroit Lions Draft. I just did one on Henry Anderson today. I've got a profile of all the Washington players coming up very soon. So it's a busy time. This is all I do. So I get paid to watch football for a living, so I have to dedicate myself to it. This is my time of year. I'm going to be down in Indy, so I'll have some reports from there too. Generally on the lighter side of things too.
No volleyball right now.
No, I'm getting a little bit old. I got to pass the torch on to the next generation.
Well, you do have a 6'4" child already, right? So
my son, his dream is to play basketball for TCU. He's going to be about 6'8". He's already got mad game, so if anybody wants to recruit him, he's listening.
Awesome. Well, guys, I appreciate you as always. Justin, Justice, we'll do this next week. Jeff, continue the great work, and we look forward to having you on again as we talk a little bit about the Detroit Lions in a couple weeks.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, everybody have a good night.
Night, guys.
Night, guys.